So, green bubbles. Honestly, I've been looking over the bubbles for this the past day or two, and these guys are actually kind of either really good or really bad. There's like a couple that are in the middle, but not too many. So this will be kind of interesting to do. As with the last video, I'm only going to be doing the first 15 bubbles of the Green Cauldron, because this video is going to be more aimed at newer players, so players that are Worlds 1, 2, and 3. Maybe if you're still early in World 4, this can still apply, because as before, you're probably getting into World 4 before you're unlocking the first 15 bubbles anyways, so, you know, take this as information and advice rather than law. And just like the last video, I want to point out no bubble left behind, because I don't want to have anybody immediately rush into alchemy and then be accidentally locked out of a potential strategy, even though I don't think it's very good. Keep things short though, no bubble left behind is a bonus you unlock in World 4, and it levels up your lowest level bubbles for free, but it can only activate on bubbles that are at least level 5. So there is a strategy where you keep some bubbles under level 5, and then no bubble left behind is free to only activate on better bubbles. I'm not going to say you should do this strategy, but I will, at certain points during the video, whenever there's a bubble that could be used for this strategy, I will mention it. If you're gonna go for that strategy, pay attention for that. But again, like, I would not recommend the strategy myself. I just want to give you guys information so you don't get locked out of it, if it is potentially something that you would really be interested in. Anyways, without further ado, our first bubble is Swift Steppin'. Each level gives you one more total agility. It only uses some copper ore, so it's basically going to be one of the cheapest bubbles that you can really do, besides the one that uses oak logs. And it's great because it gives mage accuracy. Again, remember that your main stat doesn't really give you that much damage until, I would say, middle to late World 4 at the earliest. So for you guys that this video is aimed at, your archers aren't going to be getting much damage from this. It's more about the mage accuracy. So pretty good bubble though for the mages, so going up in A tier. Second bubble we have is Archer Bust. So what this guy does is, for when you're on an archer, all of the green passive bubbles, so that's the ones without the little notches there, the smaller ones, they get buffed by whatever, 50%, 100%, up to a maximum of 3 times in the end game. So it's going to be a lot better, and it kind of makes, or it's very good, obviously, because it's boosting all of these. And it kind of makes your archers a bit more viable for pushing, because of the Shakracy bubble, which gives you more accuracy. So if you're getting, like, whatever, if Shakracy is giving you, let's say, 20 to 30%, well, again, you're playing the game, maybe not, but again, let's just use random numbers. Let's just pretend Shakracy is giving you double accuracy, right? Well, then if Archer Bust is doubling the Shakracy, well, actually, I don't know how exactly that works, if I'm honest. I don't know if you're getting 4 times accuracy or 3 times. Either way, that's an insane amount more accuracy for your archers. Kind of makes them a bit more viable, especially if you're more of an AFK player than an active player. If you're an active player, then, again, once you get to the elite classes in World 4, then the archers are kind of falling off. But, again, this isn't about elite classes, this is about more early game. So, still pretty decent. I'm going to put it in B tier. Mainly because of that, how it works with Shakracy, but still some of the other bubbles, of course, are getting better. Also, another thing that I didn't mention in the previous video for the Orange Cauldron, but for the first 3 cauldrons that have these cauldron boosting bubbles, they're supposed to multiply the bonus of all of the passive bubbles. They do not apply to the stat bubbles. There is another bubble that applies to the stat bubble, but that isn't in the first 15, so I'm not really going to mention it too much, but just something to note, right? Third bubble, though, is Hammer Hammer. Now, this is actually a really good bubble, because everybody's not smith. Well, it is smithing. You're all of your characters are making production items, obviously, right? I would even go so far as to say that this bubble is going to be equipped on everybody once you have the second bubble slot available, which I think is through bribes. Um, and then the first bubble slot is going to be used if you're mining or what have you. Now, this is also a very cheap bubble because it only uses iron ore, and the other thing is that this is one of the very few linearly scaling bubbles. So all bubbles, it doesn't matter for you early game players too much, but almost all bubbles reach a kind of soft cap. Hammer doesn't do that. Basically, every level it's going to increase by the same amount, which kind of checking over here. So every level after the first is going to be increasing your production speed by 2% for whoever has it equipped, which, in my opinion, everybody should, except in very fringe cases. So, because of how cheap it is, because of how necessary it is, and everybody's going to be equipping it, going right into A tier. Alright, so little interjection. I just realized that I didn't have an F tier. I was talking about putting the next bubble in F tier, and realized I didn't even have it here. So, a little bit of a mistake there. My apologies. But on to the next bubble, little big damage. It costs goldfish, and it gives you mastery. Now, mastery apparently comes from MapleStory. I've never played MapleStory, so I can't really tell you the similarities between MapleStory's mastery and Idleon's mastery. All I know is that in Idleon, mastery is kind of worthless. I was arguing with somebody about it the other day where this should have been placed in F tier, or that's what they were saying. And it's a little bit complicated. So, actually, first off, if you're doing a no bubble left behind strategy, this can absolutely and probably should be left below level 5. But my argument for so what mastery does is it raises your minimum damage closer to maximum damage. Now, this might sound really good, but it honestly doesn't have a lot of use cases. Once you get into the mid to late game and pushing isn't as damage dependent, it's more patience dependent. Your mastery doesn't matter because when you're leaving a character AFK, your minimum damage is not inputted anywhere into that function. It does not matter. The only time that mastery matters is when you're playing actively, when you have your character out on the map and he's swinging and using abilities. And even then, the only case that mastery is going to be useful to you is in situations in which your damage could roll low enough that it's not one-shotting an enemy anymore. I just don't see this as really being... The amount of cases where I think this is going to help a new player out is just very few and far between, right? And it costs goldfish as well, and goldfish can be used on a couple other things. It also, if you're worried about leveling up this bubble, you're also not printing bloaches for Shakracy, and that's also a lot more important than this. It just doesn't make sense to really recommend this at all. And I know I said I wasn't putting this in F tier, but I'm putting it in F tier. I don't know what my discussion was earlier, but I don't know. I'm rambling again. Anyways, on to bubble number 5? I thought this was 6, but apparently it's 5. Anvilnomics. Oh no, this was the one. Now I remember. This was the one that we were arguing about. So Anvilnomics reduces the cost for buying anvil production points, which is used to make your anvil a bit better. By the way, put it basically all into speed. Well, actually, maybe I shouldn't be recommending that. I should probably look into anvil purchasing a bit more, but I would still say speed is number 1. So, Anvilnomics only costs forest fibers, and since that is wood, it is a lot easier to print and to collect than other resources. So, in my eyes, because of the easiness of grinding for this bubble, it's not a bad bubble, right? It's not a great bubble because you can once you max out your anvil points, which is very possible, right? At least right now, I believe the anvil production points caps out at basically World 4. World 4 monster mats and a World 4 amount of coins as well. And once you get to that point, well, this bubble is useless. Which, for you Noble Bluff behind sweats, absolutely keep it at level 4. But, again, having a couple levels in this early means that you can get a couple more levels of anvil, meaning your anvil production is a little bit better. So it's kind of in the middle for me. Especially because I think this bubble is highly dependent on how much you play the game. If you're the type of guy that just wants to look at the game maybe a couple times a day, not even playing for more than an hour, this bubble, you're not going to level it that much. It's going to be, you might spend a couple hours, or well, I guess a day because you forget to change your printing setup. But you're only going to spend a little bit of time printing, level this up a couple times. Who cares, right? You're not going to be worried about focusing on the different anvil materials that you need to be spending. You just leave it for when you can just do it in one fell swoop. That's what I did, right? But if you're a guy that plays the game a lot more, you really love Idleon, you're playing it for 8 hours, hell, you're watching this guide, right? Maybe you spend a little bit more time on this bubble because you can kind of get the bubbles out a little, or you can get the anvil points out a little bit faster. So it's kind of up to the player. It's kind of up to you guys to know what kind of player are you. What are you going to be doing? Hell, maybe you're an active player and you still don't want to play around with the anvil that much and you're not going to use it. Either way, C tier. For me, at least. Alright, now for our 6th bubble is Quick Slap. There's a whole story about this as it went through a couple updates. But that's more for late and endgame players. But, so I won't really go into it too much. But it used to be very insane for endgame players, so that's why any of you new players, if you see them talking about, oh, how Quick Slap used to be, or the Quick Slap nerf, it used to be an insane bubble. But it is no longer. And even for you early game players, it's not good for you either. It gives you base damage based off base damage based off of your not base movement speed, but just movement speed in general. And I don't think you guys are going to be focusing too much on your movement speed just yet, especially in this early game phase. As you go a little bit later on in the game, you get more, and this bubble kind of becomes a little bit better. But for right now, I would probably just ignore it for the most part. Maybe put a couple levels into it. The problem is that it also uses a World 2 monster material, and monster material bubbles, it's hard to level those up early in the game. So, leaving this guy down in F tier. So next up is Sanic Tools, which gives you a percentage more skilling power for your catching nets and your traps. It uses slime, so it's a little bit harder to farm, because, again, monster material just like before. But at the same time, you kind of need you kind of need the catching power and a little bit more on the... well, not really on the trapping power so much. We'll get into that with the trapping bubble, but for catching, you kind of need all the catching efficiency you can get. So even though this is a hard to farm bubble, I'm still going to say you should probably be focusing a little bit. I'm going to put it up in B tier. But there's not really too much to say about it. So next up is Bug Squared, which is our multi-resource bubble for catching. So obviously very, very, very good. You level this guy up, you get more bugs. You spend bugs because it uses cereal. You spend bugs, you get more bugs. It's very simple, and it's very good because it's a direct multiplier. If you get this guy to say you're getting 100% more multi-bug chance, then your AFK gains are going to have 100% more than without the bubble equipped. Well, roughly, because there's other multi-bug bonuses in the game, but none that even come close to the active bubble. So as with most of these multi-resource bubbles, it's going all the way up in S tier. It is a little bit hard because it uses the third bug, but still, I would, if you don't got anything for your bowman to do, I would say send him to cereal, and you can start passively getting this bubble up. Yeah. Alright, so next up is Shakracy, which gives you more accuracy from your accuracy stats. So warriors are getting more accuracy from their wisdom, archers are getting more from strength, mages are getting more accuracy from agility, right? Which is basically where most of your accuracy is coming from anyways. So you can see this as almost a direct accuracy buff. Now, accuracy is extremely important and probably is what determines how far you can push in the first place. So obviously, increasing your accuracy, very, very, very important. Probably the most important bubble on this list as well. The only problem with Shakracy is that the material used to upgrade it is the Bloach, which is the final small fish. Yeah. So very hard to sample, very like you're not going to be getting a ton of it. I still see sometimes newer players coming into my Discord and they're like, "What's up with this Bloach sample?" And like, I got like a couple hundred goldfish and my Bloach sample is 5. And yeah, guys, that is unfortunately normal. Just because of how fishing is, it's really dumb. But yeah, fishing in general, the samples are bad, and bloach especially because it's the hardest small fish. It's hard. But do your best with it, and definitely put some effort into leveling up the Shakracy. Also realized I didn't mention at the start of the video, but this ranking, the whole tier list is not meant to be how many levels should be in a bubble, but like how much time you're devoting to a bubble. So I'm putting this guy up in S tier. It doesn't mean he has to be a higher level than everybody else, but I do recommend that you're putting more effort into leveling this guy compared to all the others. Next up is Cheap Shot. This guy gives you percent critical chance. For Left Behind sweats, this is definitely one of those ones that you can keep under level 5. Sorry, because later on in the game you're going to be getting more, way, way, way more than enough crit chance than you need. And honestly, like I think this bubble caps out at like 5% crit chance anyways. Like it's not changing any aspect of your gameplay. It's just a very, very kind of worthless bubble. So going all the way down into bottom of F tier here, it's just not useful. So next up we have Bojack from that 90s show. It gives percent total damage. It also only costs 4 souls, so that's not too bad to farm, being the first soul that you really unlock. But in my opinion, again, like, between the 3% damage bubbles, you're kind of going to be focusing on the one that buffs the damage of your main class. So if you're mainly using warriors, you're going to be doing the orange percent damage because of the second bubble for each cauldron, right? And again, we're in the green cauldron, so it's archers. And I think I've said it a few times before, I don't really respect the archer pushing that much. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But for me personally, I don't recommend it. Especially as you get later into the game, because all the other classes besides archers have really good pushing capabilities. So, again, for me, this is going down into C tier. It's not. It depends on you. If you're more of if you want to be an archer main, feel free to call me out and say that I'm wrong. All the power to you. Level the bubble up more, but for me personally, I'm gonna say, eh. So now for Call Me Ash, which is the big bubble for trapping. Not a multi-resource bubble though. It is a direct multi. Actually, I don't know if it's a direct multiplier to efficiency. It might be, but I don't want to say something that might not be true. But it gives you more efficiency. Also, just for having it equipped, you get +1 placeable traps. So if you are going out to trap on people, make sure to have it equipped just for that extra trap. It never gives you more than +1. That's the max. You can have this thing leveled to level 1,000,000. It's still just giving you +1 trap. Also to note, when you do have later game traps unlocked that give you 8 traps, you're not going to get 9 traps from this bubble. The maximum is 8, at least right now for the game. Now, the problem with this bubble is how trapping efficiency really works. So this kind of requires me to explain trapping efficiency a bit. So for trapping efficiency, the way it works is that each critter has this efficiency amount that you need to exceed to start getting extra critters. So let's say, again, I don't have the numbers on hand ready, but let's say that the 4th tier critter needs 10,000 trapping efficiency to start getting bonuses from, right? So below that, you're going to get a standard set amount of critters that honestly isn't that bad anyways. And it doesn't matter if you have 1 efficiency or 9,000 efficiency, you're getting the same amount of critters, excluding trap shenanigans that multiply different stuff, right? Once you hit 10,000, then you can start getting extra critters, right? So if you hit 20,000, again, I shouldn't even be giving any numbers here because I don't know how the formula works, but let's say at 20,000 you start getting 20% more of that critter. It's not very great, and for you guys that are still in World 3, you guys don't care about the amount of critters. What you guys are probably still doing, or what you guys should be doing, is focusing on unlocking all the critters that you can through the Lord of the Hunts quest. And to do that, yeah, you could use some extra critters for some of the later ones, but I'm going to be blunt, you're not going to be getting... Like, by the time you unlock Honkers, which is the final critter that you can lock from his questline, you're never going to have enough efficiency to get more Honkers, or actually whatever is the previous one. You're never going to be getting more critters from the efficiency. So, thinking that leveling up this bubble in the early game is going to do anything is just a lie. You can get some extra frogs, maybe some extra crabs, but I wouldn't really care about that too much for you guys. Later in the game, this becomes a little bit better. Still not as good as it should be, just because of how, in my opinion, the formula for the amount of bonus critters that you get from efficiency is just garbage. It's just garbage. But it's useless to you guys, because you guys aren't going to be getting it in the early game anyway. So I'm putting this down in D tier for you guys. So next up is Cause I Catch 'Em All, which is the other trapping bubble. So this guy gives you a better chance of catching shiny critters, which is good because you kind of need shiny critters to go through that quest line I was just talking about. And this does pair up pretty well with Hunter's talent for catching shiny critters as well. The only problem with it is that it costs rooted souls, and again, before when we were talking about the forest souls, it's like, oh, it's forest souls, it's the first soul, you probably have a bit of it, it's not too bad. Now we're getting into rooted souls. And that's a little bit harder, right? This is now the 3rd tier. You're probably still getting a bit of it. Like, this isn't Frosty Souls yet. Whenever we talk about Frosty Souls, that's, the nightmare. But Rooted Souls still, it isn't, you're not getting, like, a million of it in your back pocket anytime soon. So, it's a complicated bubble. The bonus is very good, but the cost is very bad as well. So, I'm going to go and put it in C tier here. Also, as a little bit of a side note, I did have a kind of idea the other day where maybe you could use this for Noble Left Behind Sweat. But I kind of doubt it. It's complicated, but, if you're into that strategy, look it up. Maybe you could ping me on Discord and we could talk about it in VC or something. I don't know. But moving on, we have Fast Boy talent. So this is kind of where we get into a little bit of an issue, because I'm basically copying all of this off of a tier list I made previously. Not too much has changed with bubble balancing since I made this, made the old tier list, but I put this bubble into D tier. Now, there's 2 main drawbacks of the bubble, which I could see why I would put this in D tier. One is because I don't really like archers that much, but personally, I think that's a little bit too disrespectful to be putting this in D tier, because you still need your archers to have talent points for catching. But the other drawback, and this is honestly kind of the bigger one, is that the cost of this bubble is Flycicles. Now, because this tier list is aimed at Worlds 1, 2, and 3 players, that means that this bubble costs your final catching resource. And I think you only get this resource as well at the second to last map of World 3. So you're not really going to have much time to spend on leveling this bubble anyways, and then you unlock World 4, and then I kind of say, let somebody else deal with you for tier lists. I like I I wouldn't say, if I were to be remaking this tier list, I would not put this in D. I would probably put it in C, if not B. But I'm still gonna kind of follow what Past Me said and put it in D here. I will say, don't completely ignore this bubble, right? Especially as you get into Worlds 4 and 5. Level up the bubble, right? Anyways, we now have our final bubble, Green Bargain, which reduces the material cost for all green bubbles. I think I talked about it... No, I kind of left this guy here, didn't I? I think I talked about this in the orange bubble video a bit, where some endgame players will say not to level this bubble because you want to keep everything very expensive because of a mechanic later where you start using a different resource if your bubble cost is at, I believe it starts at 100 million. But the problem with that strategy is that it's all very fine and dandy when you're trying to get to that high cost to use the alternative currency, but that means that you're keeping your early alchemy bubble levels lower because you're not going to be able to buy level 15 because it's whatever, it's not 30% cheaper anymore. So frankly, those people, why are you pushing that strategy on newer players? You really shouldn't be. Newer players, level this bubble as much as you can because it's good. It's good to have cheaper bubbles. It's not really going to be saving you much time later on in the game anyways. For you no bubble left behind Svets, I think technically you could leave this at level 4 because once you do push this bubble up to the atom range is what it's called for the endgame players, I don't think this does anything for you. But we're putting this guy up in C tier though, mainly because this guy uses owls. This is the 15th bubble. Like, you might not have this unlocked by the time you beat World 3 anyway, so this is one of those weird places of the tier list. So, yeah, that's how I would rank the first 15 bubbles for the Green Cauldron, specifically aimed at you early game players. If you managed to get all the way through the video, thank you very much. Since I uploaded the last video, I've been looking at the YouTube analytics, and seeing all those numbers actually just scares the crap out of me, man. Like, got, like, impressions of where people see it on the sidebar or in Discord or whatever, and whether they click through it. I only have, like, a 2% click-through rate, and I'm looking at that, and I'm like, I think that's bad, but I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, other YouTubers don't really talk about their click-through rate. They just say, hey, none of you guys are subscribed. Come subscribe to me and hit that like and bell button. Blah 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 blah. Like I don't care. You don't need to hit the bell button for me, by the way. I don't really care. Or maybe I should. Actually, I don't know. But for getting through the rants and everything, thank you very much. If you guys have any other criticisms for me, please please give them to me. You can find me on Twitch. I'll leave that in the description, and also in the Frozen Flames Discord. Please join the Frozen Flames Discord as well. I have spent the past couple of years working on it. We have a very big community. People will love to help you out. You can come and DM me as well if you guys have any questions, and I will be happy to help you out. And yeah, we also play some other games as well in the voice chat. So if you guys are, I don't know, into something, come and join. But yeah, I hope you guys all have a very pleasant day, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.